One, and we're live.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this Sunday's episode of Out of the Darkness. I am your host, Hugh, and I am excited to be here with all of you happy American patriots and patriots from all over the world. It's always a fun time coming in and visiting with you guys as normal. We have Soder here, our extraordinary boomer tech.
Thank you, buddy. That means a lot.
You know what? Nobody can boomer a stream like Soder. So thank you so much.
I think Nick can boomer it a little bit more.
Well, he can. And then we also have our resident boomer, Mr. Tim Miller, Esquire, local state representative here in the great state of Minnesota. I am back in my hometown. I am broadcasting to you live from the warehouse, or our house warehouse, the secondary studio. So, but glad to be here. Glad to have you guys on. We want to talk about something really important and something really near and dear to my heart. And Tim, you and I have been talking quite a bit here lately. Last week we had Steve Driscowski on. Great opportunity to speak to that guy. Very well spoken, very well informed as it pertained to the Ilhan Omar situation. And I've been thinking a lot about that. And then we did a midweek stream. If you guys have not seen the midweek stream that we did with Nick from Ricada Law, Law-Splaining Nick was with us, and we were talking about this Second Amendment debacle that we're dealing with as far as red flag laws in the country. And I've been thinking a lot about this, Tim. You know, as I understand that you hate the idea that we have to be condemning of all things. We have to be outraged constantly about different things. And I'm not trying to get into that. But the main thing I want to talk about, guys, is I believe that the Republican Party, we talk a lot about the Democrat Party. We spend a lot of time talking about left, talking about the Democrats. And I know I'm going to hurt you a little bit, Tim, and I don't mean to, because, you know, I think the world of you. But, guys, the Republican Party is dead. I am here to announce the do not resuscitate order for the Republican Party. The Republican Party of your grandfathers is dead. At one time in our lifetime, since I've been alive, the Republicans represented limited government. They represented fiscal responsibility. They represented individual liberty. They represented property rights and individual property rights. You know, I got to thinking the other day, Tim, that, you know, this whole idea of liberty and individual liberty, it really and truly is an experiment. It has never existed in the history of man, at least to my knowledge, to the extent that it has existed in this country. And so it's not like we had there were republics before, but Rome failed, right? Because unfortunately, as they brought about emperors, as they brought around supreme rulers, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. And we've seen that. The concern that I have is, as I watch how visceral we are in our condemnation of Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and AOC and that group, I realize that we have done a terrible job of allowing a certain level of tyranny to exist within the Republican Party, which is dead. And that is the reason why the Republican Party is dead, as far as I'm concerned. Not the party itself, because the party itself is alive and well.
But 3, 2, 1, here we go.
All right.
Are we back?
Are we back?
Oh my gosh. I want to kill myself.
Don't do that. Don't
Well,
do
I'll wait till after the show to do
that.
it.
Yes, yes. If you're going to do that, let's make sure.
Which is going to really suck because I'm getting a new internet provider tomorrow, hopefully. So these problems will hopefully go away.
All right. Can you guys hear us now?
Oh, they're going to have to wait like 30 seconds.
Well, if I say it now, then they'll hear us once it comes
That's
up.
right. They hear it in 30 seconds.
Right. So we have restarted.
All right, yeah, definitely we're back. First thing I heard when I refreshed the video stream on this website was, "Oh, I'm killing myself." So we're good to go.
All right, coming in loud and clear. Fantastic. So Tim, yeah, go ahead and address this. So I want to talk to a little bit about the change that has taken place in the party, and how I just don't feel that I don't feel that as a conservative that there's really a home for conservatives within a given party. I mean, the closest I think you come to is the Libertarian Party, and I've told you in the past I'm a little partial as it pertains to that. I feel like if you're going to be consistent as a legislator, you're almost going to have to be a libertarian. I say that tongue in cheek, but one of the things we talked about earlier was, Trump, for example. This week, Trump came out and he said that that he was ordering all American companies to come out of China, and the word he used in his tweet was ordering, right?
Right.
And while I've been very supportive of our president on this show, and in most things I do support him, but I'm going to call out wrong as being wrong, and I don't care who says it. A president has no right to tell a private company who they can and cannot do business with if that company, or if those people are not considered to be enemies of the state or enemies of the country, right?
And that's the point that I was going to bring up. I agree with it totally, with the exception of if we're entering into war with someone or whatever, we're entering into direct conflict with a country, then there may be some executive orders that are historically consistent. But yeah, he was an error in saying that. I'm not, okay, full disclosure, I am not a super homer for Trump, nor am I a super detractor. I'm very much in between, healthy in between. I'm supportive of President Trump, but I don't have a Trump pillow that I sleep on at night. Okay. I think he erred. I'm not trying to defend him. I know you're upset at the word order. If he signed an executive order moving him out, that means a lot more to me than if he uses the word order. We'll see what happens in the news on Monday. I looked it up when you mentioned it. I didn't know this had happened. I looked at the article that I very briefly looked at. It was on Friday, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So this will be pieced apart on Monday. It looks like there was more stuff in relationship to the tariffs and some other things with China, that there's going to be all sorts of things talked about on Monday. So, but no, I agree with you. He shouldn't be telling companies who they can and can't do business with. Now, I think if he has some compelling reasons that he wants those companies to consider, then he goes and talks to them directly. But going to the public and saying, I order businesses to leave, was an error.
So we had a question that I wanted you to address.
Yep.
In talking about this, because the Republican Party has been, I feel that where they started to lose it, okay, it was in the 70s. I feel like they started to lose it when they allowed the Democrats out of the silence instead of, well, we could be out of the silence, but out of the darkness is out of the silence now. But I think back in the 70s, when we allowed the left to start to brand the Republican Party, and you could tell me the Republican Party is branded as what, Tim? The party of who is the Republican Party according to the left? They support who? Who are they for?
it's too wide open a question. I don't know if you're talking about now or since the 70s. Well, you're leading me into something. Go ahead and give me my answer.
Now, I'm not trying to lead you into anything because I feel like we're on the same page as far as this goes. But the Democrats are the left, I should say, not the Democrats. They've essentially branded the Republicans as being the party of the rich, right? Being the party of the corporations, caring more about corporations than they do about the middle class and about the small guy, right? And that's the way they've been painted. But I mean, so let me ask you. I mean, we had a question come in about the amount of influence that corporate lobbyists have in the in our government. Let me ask you, how much influence do you feel that corporate lobbying plays in our government?
Well, let me throw the question. I know some people may have seen it, but it was way up on the feed. So let me just say from SJW, this is a great question, by the way. Is there any chance Tim could address how much corporate lobbyists impact the legislative process? Is state really for sale? It'd be interesting to get his opinion on that. So the direct answer is they have a great deal of influence, but so do the lobbyists. University of Minnesota has lobbyists at the Capitol. You have insurance plans that have lobbyists. You have electric companies. Just about the only people that don't have very strong representation are the people that we would all agree are weak and probably should have representation. You know, the truly elderly that need help and special needs people, developmentally challenged, all those sorts of people, they have terrible representation at the Capitol because they don't have the money to spend on it. So by nature, corporations have a lot of money. So do they have a presence there? Absolutely. Or you have the Chamber of Commerce. They have a great deal of influence, as does what's called the Minnesota Business Partnership. Minnesota Business Partnership, the way I describe it is it's like the Chamber of Commerce for Fortune 500 companies. So Medtronics, Target, these major companies that are based in Minnesota, some that just have a big presence in Minnesota, are part of the Minnesota Business Partnership. So do they have influence? Now, it isn't exactly a quid pro quo the way that we view it, meaning, you know, is government for sale to these people? Not necessarily directly. There has been a couple of occasions where I think it probably has been on specific legislation. So, for example, you know, Xcel Energy is, I think, the biggest energy provider, electricity provider here in the state of Minnesota. And have I seen their lobbying efforts have us have direct policy that's beneficial for them? Yeah, absolutely. So, but it's not a for sale thing like, hey, you give me money and I'll do this for you. Again, has that ever happened? I'm sure it happens every year, but just not on a grand scale. It isn't like with everything that we do, it's determined by that. But yeah, you have those influencers in St. Paul. I don't know if that answered your question.
So
SJW?
In your honest opinion, do you feel that it is fair to say that those corporate lobbyists have more influence over the Republicans or more influence over the Democrats?
Well, it depends on what subject you're talking about. So in certain circumstances, absolutely. See, we don't sit there as legislators and say, well, let's see what big cat can come in and grease my palms and I'm going to grease their palms and that. What happens is there's a lot of things going on in St. Paul in a bunch of areas. We can't be experts on everything. We can't know everything. So the people that come to St. Paul and say, this is what we want, or this is the way things should be, or we'd really like this or that, you're just naturally influenced by the information that's provided to you. Now, the people that have the funding and the wherewithal available, they present their message in a much more compelling way because they have professionals doing it, right? So it's just human nature that you're going to have a level of influence over that. Now, where you do see the influence of the big dollars is at the caucus level. So the House Republican caucus, the House Democrat caucus. Okay, they have the leadership. Someone will go into the speaker's office and say, here's what's important to us and our priorities. And if that speaker has a great deal of connection, so like in the Democrat Party, let's just say the public unions, who are very strong with the Democrat Party in Minnesota, they go in there and they say, Speaker Hortman, we really think you need to focus on A, B, and C. They're going to get more attention from the speaker on that. Flip it on the other side, and when the Republicans have the majority and the speaker is a Republican, you're going to have a level of influence from, like, let's say, the Minnesota Business Partnership. And I'm kind of dividing lines here for simplicity. It's not always that tight of a line of those two groups, but that's the sort of thing that you see.
So I've spoken to you about this in the past, Tim, and so this is my frustration with the Republican Party as it stands. I for a long time, I considered myself to be a Democrat, considered myself to be a conservative Democrat. And as I saw the Democratic Party moving further and further to the left and espousing ideas and espousing certain things that I could not uphold, right? Things that I could not support in good conscience. I found myself identifying more with Republicans. And I would say since George W. for sure, I've seen a major shift in the Democrat Party, or in the Republican Party. So growing up, and Soder, I don't know if you remember this or not, we're pretty close to being the same age, but I remember, watching the Little Red Dots, and when 7-Up was really starting to take off, right? And how 7-Up, their advertising logo was literally this. Being from the South, it's everything's a Coke. Everything's a Coke, whether it's grape soda, whether it's Squirt, whether it's Ruby Red, whether it's an orange soda. Everything's a Coke. And so, literally, the geniuses at 7-Up thought that the best marketing strategy they could come up with in the beginning was literally 7-Up, the Uncola, which it actually was marketing genius because they separated themselves from everybody else out there. They came out, they said, hey, we're something different. We're not Coca-Cola. We understand that we're different. We understand that we're not going to grab as much of a market share as Coca-Cola, but we are the Uncola. And I feel like in a lot of ways, the Republican Party has presented themselves as being the undemocrat, right? Literally, that could be their strategy. It could be the undemocrat. It's been a long time since I've seen a Republican president. I feel that Trump did a good job of this, but before Trump, right? And I think we have to speak in terms before Trump, because I feel that Trump is doing a lot to try to fix some of the issues. Some of the things he's doing, I don't agree with, but I feel like he's speaking to a lot of the frustrations that those of us that feel like we're outliers in the party have had for a very long time. And one of those being that we've been told so long to vote for, not you, but you know what I'm saying, right? Not you personally. This is not an attack on you. But we've been told by so many Republican lawmakers in the past we should vote for them because a vote for them was a vote against other people, right? So vote for me. Otherwise, you're voting for LGBTQ. You're voting for trans. Vote for me, or you're going to get your guns taken away. Vote for me. Huh?
You're saying all the things I was about to say, so never mind.
Well, but that's essentially what I feel like we've been doing. We've been voting in order to not get certain things taken away, yet all I see is more and more government. I see the government growing by leaps and bounds. And at some point, somebody's got to be the adult in the room and say, hey, wait, this is not what we stand for. So I'd like to hear from you, Tim, and I'm going to put you on the spot, and I hate to do this, but as an elected...
You don't.
Oh, that was a lie. I love putting you on the spot. But let me ask you, so tell me this. If I was an alien coming from the planet Xenon, just coming here today, and I'm ready to pull the trigger to vote for somebody, why should I vote Republican? What does the Republican Party today stand for?
Wow, it's not even campaign season and you're putting me on the spot. I'll tell you that. Let me tell you something first. The uncola that you're talking about is the message that they're saying to the base, which, by the way, I disagree with also. You need to point out, hey, listen, we're going to hold the line. Like on Second Amendment rights, we're going to hold the line. We're not going to let the Democrats do that. Okay, so we're the undemocrat because of that. But I do agree with you that the Republican Party tends to struggle with saying this is what we are rather than what we aren't. I don't disagree with that. I think that's also why we tend to fail here in Minnesota in statewide races. We tend to fail as Republicans in a lot of national races that I think we should be winning. We don't, because we don't project the vision. We talk about the way things aren't, or the way, the way the people on the other side are doing. And the Democrats do a good job of casting their vision. The only problem is their vision for the United States is not good, and it's not productive, and it's not accurate to what people believe. So I will agree with you to that point. However, that doesn't mean that's what the Republican stands for.
Is this the part where you're gonna tell me that the Republican Party is still alive and well and representing the people?
Yeah, I do. And here's the struggle is we live in the social media era. We'll blame it on social media again, but we're talking about a binary set with a bunch of subsets, even though it's only binary. Now, what do I mean by that? So you're Republican or you're Democrat. Yeah, there's some other smaller parties, but realistically, we're in a two-party system where it's Republican or Democrat. Yeah, there's a Libertarian Party. Yes, there is a Socialist Party, but the Socialists do their work in the Democrat Party. The Libertarians do their work in the Republican Party. And so there is a vast spectrum in the Republican zone of where people are at, okay? And, we've talked about this often, you and if not all the listeners here, most of the listeners here are of the libertarian mindset, and that's good. But that isn't necessarily where all Republicans are. We have our establishment Republicans or moderates. We have our Reagan conservatives. I guess that's what I am, for lack of a better term. So we have all those different things. So I think the Republican Party still does and still is the party of individual freedoms, of individual responsibilities. If you're going to take those freedoms, we think that government is too big. Now, in a Republican party, you might have people argue what is too big. For libertarian, it's, pretty much everything except for these two things, whereas some more moderate people might add some more in. But we are still that. I believe that we are the people, the Republicans still espouse the American dream better than anyone. I also think, in contrast to the Democrats don't talk about the American dream and the opportunity for it. They talk about the American dream and how people have been robbed of it. Okay? That's what they spend all their time on. You don't hear Republicans talking about how they've been robbed, except for you people complaining about your student debt when you went to college. You guys complain about being robbed or Social Security or things like that. That was a little poke, just so you know. But your countenance just went down. You could swing at me if you're in the room right now. But anyway, I do. And you say the Republican Party is dead. Well, I don't even know what that means. It may be dead to you. It may be dead because it's not espousing the things that you want.
Party, when I say the Republican Party is dead, the reason why I say the Republican Party is dead is because there is no organized party anymore for as a home for true conservatives, for true limited government conservatives, for true fiscal conservatives.
That's not true.
That is true. We can say that's what the spirit of the Republican Party is, but what does the Republican Party actually do? Okay, so let me back up. I feel like that one of the things that I hate the most about today's political climate that we're in is that America, what made America great when you boil it down to its most basic points, I feel that what made America great is that America was the first country to really elevate individuality, right?
Yes.
This idea that we hold these truths to be self-evident, okay? That all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, right? That there was an individual behind every group, and that individual was where the power was. And so elevating that individual, not which clan were you from, which tribe you were from, which group, whether it be serfs or whether it be rulers or whether it be lords or commons, regardless of any of that each person had the ability to govern themselves, right? What the Democrats started doing, it seemed like in the 70s, was trying to create this certain bit of tribalism to divide and conquer. I see. We had the civil rights movement was necessary, but I think that unintended consequences of the civil rights movement, unfortunately, became a certain level of identity politics, right? If you were going to be for civil rights, you had to vote for this group and you had to espouse these ideas. Next came the feminist movement, right? If you were a true feminist, you had to believe this way. You had to vote this way, right? You had Woodstock come in that period of time, and you had the hippies, and you had a lot of different groups created during that time. Well, now we're seeing the fallout from that, right? Where someone like myself, being a black conservative, I have no home, really, right? Because I'm expected to vote a certain way. I'm expected to listen to a certain type of music. I'm expected to hate Trump. I'm expected to do so, and I laugh in the face of all of those stereotypes. And so I feel that while we knock the left because, we split everyone into, okay, now the feminists. So you have to be with the feminists. You have to be down with that movement. Okay, well, now we're seeing that the feminists have even split off into their own subgroups. We have the lesbian group, right? And because you're a lesbian, you have to be this way. Well, at what point do we start to elevate individuality above that? We know what the left does, but we do the same thing on the right, right? I mean, this whole idea of law and order, right? We have to support the police, this Blue Lives Matter movement, right? Well, no, I don't support the police. Newsflash, I support the police that are doing the right thing, but if a cop does something to violate his authority, and he goes outside of the confines of his authority, he needs to be treated just like everybody else, right? This whole idea of border security, I feel like we're supposed to be uniting around that. Well, if you're a conservative, you have to be for strong borders. I think it's deeper than that, though. Soder, you need to come in on this one, too. You're just sitting back, being quiet, and letting me take all the heat on this. Okay?
I'm just letting you go because I don't think it's a difference. I think it's a difference of perspective. And here's what's coming to mind. Okay, I hope I can be articulate and brief on this. So I just brought up on my screen because I want to use the literal words from the Declaration of Independence that you referenced. Okay, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. I won't keep reading on because I'd read the whole thing and I'd start tearing up. Okay. So I just read you something. Now, if we had I'm just going to start calling myself a Reagan conservative because I don't seem to get yelled at whenever I say that. So I'm a boomer Reagan conservative. You're libertarian. Let's say there's a liberal listening. Let's say there's whatever, a socialist listening. When I just read that, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, they heard something different. Each and every one of them heard something different with this. Okay? So what I want to pose to you is we talk about the great American experiment. And the great American experiment is still under question. I think it's going to be under question until we fold, or we never fold, and it's going to continue to be asked. We wrestle and struggle with what these things mean. I always say we said that all men are created equal, but when we formed the Constitution, we still had slavery.
Well,
so obviously all men, hold on a second. Let me make my final point and then I'll let you talk. Okay. So when you say, why is it that if I, as a conservative, have to defend the police, why is it that if I'm a liberal, I have to fill in the blank or whatever? Who's making you do that? You're subjecting yourself to that if you are. Now, when we have parties, you identify yourself with more than one than the other, because again, we have a binary choice in our government system. So you pick A or B. You don't get A through Z. Okay. And if we get A through Z, that has its problems too. A plural government has challenges too. Look at England and Brexit, for example. There are challenges when you have more than two choices. Okay. But the point is I can identify myself as a Republican, and there's probably someone out there who identifies himself as a Republican that I disagree with. I don't know where the problem is with that, or why we have to condemn the system because the Republican Party doesn't fit exactly what you want. My challenge to you and anyone else listening, if you don't like where the Republican Party is going, get in the game and change the Republican Party and its direction. That's your right. That's your responsibility.
I fully I understand that, but I don't know if that is the. I feel that the Republican Party is now branding itself as the lesser of the two evils, right? I mean, we see Trump fighting both sides, having to fight both the Republicans and fight the Democrats. I look at it from this standpoint. For example, the border security. I got into a little bit of an argument with someone this week because they were yelling about border security and we need to deal with this illegal immigration issue. And I had to think about this, Tim. Would the Republicans, and I'm going to ask you, Soder, and then we'll ask Tim, because I think I know where Tim is going to go.
All right,
Soder, if 80% of the people who were coming across the border were Republicans, would the Republicans be against the illegal immigration?
I thought we established this last week when there was that legislator who put forward legislation to allow concealed carry holders to have a marijuana card. Does that answer your question? To my thoughts on that?
Expound.
Okay, so yes, if the majority of people coming across the border were deeply conservative and the Republicans knew that they would be voted for by them, they'd be all for it.
And that's where the rubber meets the road, right? So to me, it's not a border issue. That's just a symptom of the real issue. The real issue, in my opinion, is that we live in a welfare state. Take away all the welfare, do away with those programs, which I know where you come from, Tim. That's heresy because people would die. But do away.
No, you constantly misquote me on that.
That's what you said. That's what you said. We got it all.
No, that's what you heard.
No, that's what. It's what I heard because that's what you said. That's what came out of your mouth. Of course, it's what I heard. But the problem I have with that is that we live in a welfare state. If we were not offering welfare and we were simply saying, hey, you want to come over here and you want to work, you're free to come over and work as long as you check in at the door and we know who's here. then by all means, you have every right to come in here and work. At that point, I'm all for it.
We've got two types. We've got two types, and we're oversimplifying here. But to oversimplify, we've got two types of people that are coming over the border from the South that's creating these issues. Number one, cheap labor that business wants here in the United States. Why? Because we killed off 1.5 generations of babies, and now we don't have the population to do the labor. Okay. So we have a need for labor that's trying to be addressed. It's the dirty secret that no one wants to talk about. We need someone to do the jobs that we don't want to do. So that there's an appeal for an opportunity. Now understand, in our area, we have a very big dairy system, which goes to the University of Mexico City and hires dairymen from there to come up and work here. And you know what? They love it. They're properly documented. They make a good living. They work up here and then they move back home because that's what they want to do. And they need the work up here because dairy work is hard and you work a 12-hour shift and people don't like it. It's dirty. Okay. And they need someone to do it. The other group that's coming over the border are the people that are exploiting our rules, our systems, our lack of following rules and stuff like that. And we have an incredible amount of drug trafficking and human trafficking coming over the border. An incredible amount. We have a lot of bad people that are coming over our border, or they're exploiting people coming over the border to do their bad deeds. That's the far majority of the problems that we're dealing with the threats to individuals, the safety of individuals and things like that. So you ask the question, you know, if it was 80% Republicans that were coming over the border, would the Republicans as a party be exploiting or be talking about how we have to stop immigrants coming over? The way you put it that way, probably not. But then the Democrats would, right?
Because if even 66% of the people coming across the border were voting Republican, the Democrats would build the wall themselves. You know it, and I know.
Here's I hope I can find that, because let's see.
Well, he's finding that. We have a Streamlabs donation from Elephant Hunter Jones for $2. In Steve Irwin voice, crikey, over there what's called a boomagop. It's known to charge when his flag is burned or someone takes a knee, but gun restrictions are like a lullaby. I'm going to poke it. Takes out
That's
later.
Great. That's awesome. So, Notorious Moon Man, I think that's what, I have old person eyes, so I think that's what it says. Sorry to be the one to tell you, but both parties are full of nothing but career politicians who only want to stay in power and could care less about you. Now, are there some politicians that are like that? Absolutely. Am I here to defend all politicians? No.
Notorious Moon Man?
I can only talk about me.
You need to meet Tim.
What's that?
Notorious Moon Man, you need to meet Tim.
Well, you know, and I'm not here to defend myself individually, but I hope I'm representative of what I'm trying to defend. Okay. There are people like they are describing. Okay. It's state politics like I'm in that would be sort of foolish. You don't make really any money. Some people think we do, but we really make an okay living, but it's not like anything that you'd write home to mom about and say, look what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. My wife works 1.5 jobs plus does some weekend training of first aid and CPR so that we can get along, because I don't make enough money with what I do. So we're not getting rich. Career politicians in Minnesota, the average length of a term for a legislator in Minnesota is 6 years. So there are people who are insensitive, but I can tell you that there's been a real move. Remember the Tea Party in 2009? That was a big movement time for people to say, that's why when I got involved, because I said we need to have the average person be involved. There's lots of Republicans that are like that. The Democrats, in response to kind of that move of the Tea Party, said, uh-oh, our voice is getting run over. We need to get involved. And a lot of the people, as much as I hate them and disagree with them, people like AOC, she said, I'm going to step in and do what I think is right. And she got involved. Okay. So there are people that are passionate, if you will, for the right reasons being there. And I want to reemphasize, going back to, this is the great American experiment. Can we govern ourselves? Can we hold the government accountable? Right now, I think the big fear is that we aren't holding government accountable. But here's the deal, folks. It's our power to do that. But we have to be willing to do that.
So with that, do you believe that the abolitionist movement did more to end slavery, or do you think that Congress did more to end slavery?
Boy, ask me a big question I have to think about. I don't know the specific answer there, but for something that major, here's what I'll say. I think all the elements played into each other for such a time as that.
You're such a politician.
Because no, that's not avoiding the question. That's trying to answer it as best I can and accurate without taking a side, because it's easy to take a side. I think the abolitionists had a significant role. Okay. A real favorite for libertarians, I think President Abraham Lincoln had a huge role in addressing this. I like when I see your face kind of tighten up when I say something like Abraham Lincoln. There was many different things. There was what's happened in England with William Wilberforce, that it had to do with the slavery ending. It's a process. There's lots of different things that came. The Civil War didn't start because of slavery. I think it kind of did, but it, on its face didn't start. But I guarantee you the Civil War determined that we were going to answer that question, and we did.
So I feel that you go to this quite often, and I understand the heart of what you're saying, that if you don't like the way things are going, get involved and
yes.
be I understand what you're saying, and so I'm not misquoting you when I say that, right?
Correct.
Okay, so but the only way to get involved is not government. I feel like what we're attempting to do here is involvement, right? Speaking on the issues.
Yeah. I don't disagree.
And so being involved in government, I feel that the abolition I don't feel that slavery would have ended as quickly as it did, and it obviously didn't end quickly enough for many. It should have never been a thing to begin with. But men do evil things, right? Especially when there's profit to be made.
Yep.
But with that being said, there was a great movement of people. There was a multicultural movement. It was made up of former slaves. It was made up of former slave owners even. It was made up of Quakers, of religious men, of Muslims. It was a coalition of people in the country who saw it as a scourge on the nation, and they wanted it stopped, right?
Correct.
And so with all that being said, I feel that there is, for those people who don't have political aspirations, there's a lot to be done, and there's a lot that can be done. And I'm not
I agree, but you started with, how are we going to change our government? How are we going to have a party that responds to us?
Well,
I'm just saying that in that context, get involved.
Well, get involved, but yeah, absolutely. But I'm just saying that, so we're clear. That's not saying that everybody on this chat, everyone that follows this YouTube channel needs to go and get involved in government.
I agree. No, I agree totally.
But we do owe it to ourselves to educate ourselves on the issues and to have honest discussion about the issues, right?
So when you run for office, the first question people ask is, why are you running for office? Right? They want to know who you are, then they want to know why you're running for office. And the response that I give every single time is this is where I believe that I could have the greatest impact at this point in my life. And so I presented myself available to serve in this way. Okay, when I was in my 20s, I served in the Army Reserve. That's the way that I believe that I could serve as best. Through the years, I've been a youth group leader. I've worked with crisis pregnancy centers. I'm just kind of giving you the quick bio of myself, okay? But there's ways that you identify. I'd like to see everyone have the attitude of being a world changer. But being a world changer doesn't necessarily mean in government, okay? World changer means here's the sphere of influence that I think I can have the greatest impact, and I'm going to make the world a better place in that sphere of impact. So when we were offline and when we talked on the phone, we were kind of talking about Donald Trump. This was right before the show started. I groused because it seems like everyone wants me to either hold Trump up as the answer or the problem. I don't think he's that important in our life, and you're addressing that exactly right now. He shouldn't be that much important. How do you make him less important? Stop getting so worked up every single time. Now, he's the president of the United States. He has wields incredible power. Okay. A lot of people would argue too much power. Okay. Okay. But then let's stop trying to draw on him being the answer or the problem. The answer and the problem is resolved when we step forward and determine where we can engage, where we can have our influence, and where we can be the world changers, whether it's in government, influencing government, it's in the church, it's in our work that we do, it's a skill set that we have that we can produce something. You and I are on this show right now. We may not be pros at it, but we're very comfortable talking online to people all over the place. So this is what we're doing. My challenge to people is to get involved. And if you don't like your government and you think something should change about it, stop bitching about it and get involved.
Well, in every Sunday, well, most Sundays, I, outside of other things that I do, you know about my involvement in the local party here and what we try to do here. But every Sunday we have honest discussion. We don't agree with everything. We don't agree on some things. I do believe we both love this country. I do believe that. I believe that we both want to see this country be the best version of itself that it can be. I believe that. In fact, I'll go a step further. I'll say I believe there are a lot of Democrats who want this country to succeed. But we have to quit. We have to quit with this identity politics deal, right? On the left and the right, because what we're doing is we are elevating group thought, which really and truly is just communism, right? It really is. It's just communism. It is elevating the group above the individual. And I can't think of anything less American than that idea, right?
I agree. Now here's the challenge. Okay. I agree with you, the problem of identity politics, but you know what identity politics gets you? Elected. You know what identity politics also gets you? A majority. So the challenge is, and how do you get things done in government? If you're elected and you're in the majority. Okay. So I go back to the first identity politics that I recognize was back when John F. Kennedy ran against Richard Nixon for the presidency, and they had the TV whatchamacallit, the debate, and Kennedy looked great and Nixon looked like he had the flu. And people cite that as Kennedy was brilliant because he related to people better. Nixon looked like, stuffed shirt Washington guy. That's an identity, right? Now, it may have happened before, but, it had been a TV. So I agree with you with what should be. I try to be real with my constituents. You've been around me. You would agree with that. Again, not trying to build myself up, but I recognize what you're saying. I'm just telling you that it's compelling for people that want to have power to go after that identity politics, because if they get the majority vote off of it, they win. That's the problem we have in our society right now,
and that is the problem, and that's what's led us to his. To be honest, I'm not afraid, because you hit the nail on the head, and I've said it to my children, and my father said it to me. Is that when you fear someone, when you give someone the power of fear over you, you give them literally the keys to enslave you. But I'm concerned about 2020, because I believe that we've reached a level of disrespect and a level of disregard for our fellow man. And this political thing has gotten dirty. It's gotten so dirty.
No doubt about it.
To where now people are, I mean, you have people that are doxing companies that support the opposition candidate.
Yep.
And whether it's a Democrat or Republican that does that, I'm completely 100% against that, right? And that type of behavior, right? But I've been told, I'm just going to speak for myself, and I'm nobody's victim, right? I wouldn't trade my life for anybody else's. I'm so happy and blessed to be who I am, right? I'm nobody's victim, but at the same time, I'll speak and say, I've been told several times, well, you're just not really black, or you're not black enough, or you're not this or that, because how could you, as a black man, vote this way? I have friends of mine that are gay or lesbian. Well, how could you be gay and vote this way? You know, how could you be a union man and vote this way? How could you support that, being a patriot? Well, because I'm an American first and foremost. And that is where we are missing it, Tim. That's where we are missing it, because we all should have the same basic interest. And what is that? We should always be looking to make the best America that we can make. I don't care what color tie you wear, whether it's a red or a blue one, or you sit on the right or the left side of the aisle. The first question should always be, what does this advance America or not? And I feel that at the place that we are at now, we're putting the party and other groups above what's best for America. And that's the concerning part about it. If a Democrat came out and they had great ideas and they were looking to shrink the size of government and balance the budgets, and they were looking to restore the power to the individuals and to the states, you know what? I could probably vote for them. Forget the fact that they're a Democrat, if their ideas are proper. But I feel that we are creating these little tribes, and I feel that it's going to implode at some point because of it.
Well, I think the tribes have been there because we've been in a two-party system, and they've throughout history kind of shifted over time. And, you know, I'm going to just talk about when it was Republicans and Democrats coming out into the Civil War and after that, because it's a little bit easier. Obviously, there were some other parties before that. But fundamentally, we recognize the U.S. under the Republican Democrat, which, by the way, at the turn of the century, the Republicans sounded more like the Democrats. Democrats sounded more like the Republicans. Things have a way of moving around and shifting. And that's part of the great American experiment, I think, as well. I want to go back to what you said in the very beginning of that little segment. I'm concerned about 2020 also and the volatility of it, because the big difference is, and I think you use this word tribalism, is I agree that's something that's new. Maybe that's what you meant, is you have these two different groups that are, you know, kind of commanding and determining certain things in different directions within their party. But we have this sort of fear of the other side that has shifted from words into actions. You know, before we went as we were coming back on the air when we lost sound, I talked about how there was an assault at the Minnesota State Party in the Republican booth as defined in the media, as a group of Democrats that wouldn't leave the booth. So I'm just I don't know how you define that, probably based on what they were yelling at each other about. But you actually have a state fair of volatility. I jokingly said 2 summers ago, I have a lot of parades in my district. I was protested at one of my parades 2 years ago. Protested at a parade. I mean, and you can kind of giggle at that one because I sort of did. But as you know, we discussed a couple weeks ago about how someone didn't like that my friend Steve Druskowski, which people heard here last week, he came out to my close friend of mine. He's the reason why I'm in office right now, besides my wife. Okay. And he came to talk about the work that he's doing to simply hold Ilhan Omar accountable. And I had people out here that shut down my event not once, but twice. And then I had it anyway but I had to do it without advertising it on social media, or they probably would have fined to shut it down again. Shut it down. Not just say you're a terrible person for having Steve come out here and letters to the editor or, on my social media. They actually went after the businesses where I was going to have my event. So I agree with you. I think this is going to get more volatile in this next year. It's funny how some of the people that tell me they want calmer heads to prevail are some of the most outspoken people that are attacking all these different things. That's why I say we're in a historical time. I think we're going to see things that will stun us.
Well, I'm going to answer something in the chat right now, and it's not really have anything to do with what we're talking about, but
Yeah.
it interests me at the same time. Talking about the how America and this is what this it kind of does speak to what we're talking about, because I feel that we have seen our educational system turned over to this modern day leftist movement, right? And I feel that they are teaching history in a way that is going to benefit their cause. Let me back up. The northern states abolished slavery upon the Declaration. We were one of the first countries, when we declared ourselves free from the British, we were one of the first countries to start the process of abolishing slavery. But yet no one talks about that. No one talks about the fact that the northern states were among some of the first to say, you know what, we're doing away with this whole slavery thing. Before the Brits did, before much of Europe did, we stood on that all men were created equal. Now, obviously, there were more options in the North, industrially speaking, than there were in the South. So slavery still had a stronghold, because what did the South have for industry? Well, much like the Midwest, they were limited to, for industry purposes, they were limited to agriculture, right? Without machinery as we have today, they needed manpower. And so the way that they saw forward with that was through slavery. Now, was it right? Absolutely not. I mean, I'd be a fool to sit here and say I was okay with that. But this whole idea that I'm seeing now that we're on stolen land, and how dare we? Let's be real, okay? Let's just stop let's just stop this charade. You show me a country today that is occupied and run by the same people who originally founded that country. Your country, let's be real, is only your country as long as you have the ability to protect it and to keep it, right? And that's what we have to realize today. America could disappear tomorrow if China decided they were going to bring all their military might and they were able to defeat us. We had times in history with with both world wars where we could have all been speaking German or speaking Japanese, right? But thank God we were able to defend ourselves. And so I feel that this whole idea that that we stole this or we stole that, first off, there was no nation here prior to America being established. There was no nation. There were indigenous peoples here, but there was no nation. And the settlers came here, they colonized it, and they established a great nation. And for that, I am proud. But I just wanted to address that, because this whole idea of the indigenous people having their land stolen is ridiculous. And the reason why it hits me, the reason why it hits me so hard is because right now, I'm sure you heard this week that there was a big to-do about Trump wanting to buy Greenland. I'm sure you heard about that.
Wanted to buy Greenland?
Wanted to buy Greenland.
Yeah. I didn't know it was for sale.
The question is, why does he want to buy it? Because going to Greenland is a euphemism for suicide. Is he wanting to send some people there, or was he wanting to capitalize on suicides for some reason?
but they're saying, well, that's wrong, and they're fighting. But I'm thinking, we bought Alaska, we bought Louisiana, we bought California. I mean, America has several territories that were bought from other countries, just like Greenland was.
But is Greenland for sale? That's the part that I got lost on.
Well, nothing's for sale until someone offers you the.
But who do you pay?
Money. Denmark is it as it would seem. So Denmark.
I didn't understand that story. I thought it was just a slow news cycle story that they brought up. I don't get it.
And it very well could be, but I mean, the Louisiana Purchase.
Bought it from Napoleon.
Well, yeah, we bought it from Napoleon. Yeah. Bought it from the French. Well, it was Jefferson, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. We bought Alaska, one of the greatest investments I think that America ever made. We bought Alaska from the Russians. I mean, that for pennies on the acre. It was a fantastic purchase. But
which one? Alaska?
Huh?
Alaska was the best purchase.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That was a good capitalist making that purchase.
Well, yeah, it's all about free market capitalism. But those are the things that I feel like we're missing. That's the boat we're missing, because I don't hear enough Republican candidates out there talking about what are the solutions. How do we make America great again? What are the policies what are our solutions? And I feel like that's what we're missing in the inner city, right? Trump did a heck of it.
You're touching on. I agree, but here's what I think you're touching on. The United States is in desperate need. Now, hear me in the purity of this statement. The United States is missing true and real leadership. We're lacking in that. Now, there's got to be great leaders out there. Where are they? I don't know. Why are they not stepping forward? Maybe we don't. Okay. So I'm a Christian man. So I look at the Old Testament and I look at the good kings and the bad kings. If you want to make that comparison, we haven't had a good king, right? I mean, we've had, great king. I'm a homer for Ronald Reagan, not just because of when I grew up. That probably has a lot of influence, but he was a great leader. He inspired people. He was a great communicator. They called him the great communicator, of course. He did pose those visions. Not everyone agreed with him, but he gave a vision for America that a lot of people liked, and it was in an absence
for the war on drugs.
What's that?
Except for the war on drugs, but go ahead.
Well, the war on drugs picked up more under Bush. That was when it happened.
But it was declared under Ronald Reagan.
That's fine. But I can tell you that, see, when I look at a leader, I don't look at the 3 things that they did, that they accomplished. I look at the character traits that they have. And a strong leader, some of the most obvious traits is that they have integrity, that they're good communicators, they're bold, they're visionary, they aren't easily defeated by outside influences. This last spring, I listened to, I didn't read in a book, I listened to an autobiography on Winston Churchill. It was a huge one. It took 52 hours on Audible. So it was I can't imagine how many pages the actual book was. And I will tell you that Winston Churchill is probably, if not the greatest leader in the last 100 years, he's one of the greatest in the last 100, 200 years. Okay. And I will tell you that if you listen to that biography, the man was heavily flawed in a lot of areas. He made some stupid mistakes as the leader of England, but he encompassed the ability to not only have a clear vision of something, but the ability to stick to that vision and to communicate that vision to people, especially in difficult times. We don't have a whole lot of people. The one thing that I give Trump a lot of credit for is he definitely has the boldness to say what needs to be said. That's what I think people are drawn to. Okay. There's some other character traits of a great leader that I don't think he has. I don't think he has a tempered tongue. And I think that you should have that when you are a great leader. You need to know what to say, when to say it, and how to say it. And he just throws everything on the table, sometimes just to tweak people. I don't think that's a good leader. I think him saying that, I demand or command, would you say? I command that you can't do business with China. That's not a sign of a good leader. Okay. Doesn't mean he's terrible or he's a terrible president. But what the United States needs is someone or a group of people who are, like you said, willing to show that vision of what it means in the great American experiment, of that we can live individual lives with those around us in peace and profitability. I believe that we can do that. And we need someone who can express that in a way that moves the nation beyond this petty politics and beyond the identity politics.
Well, I believe that for all of his flaws, Trump was what this country needed at the time in a lot of ways. Now,
I think he's inevitable. Yeah,
I'm going to hold it. I'm going to hold back my complete praise of him because of some of the harebrained things that he said recently. First of which being the whole debacle about needing to invoke some type of a red flag law on a national level. I will get on the rooftop of the House and argue against that. So I'll withhold my support for those things. But at the same time, I feel that he has done some things that have needed to be done for a very long time. One of which is going into some of these African American communities and these communities of color, I guess you would say, and saying, you know what, you guys have been run by the Democrats for all this time. You guys have had these policies in place. You can't find a conservative leader, a Republican leader in most of these areas. And these policies have led you nowhere but down. You've gone backwards. You have a higher rate of fatherlessness. You have a higher level of mass incarceration. You have a higher level of drug addiction. Your poverty levels have continued to go up. You have a generation after generation that is welfare dependent, right? It's not, people aren't rising to the occasion. And a lot of that is because of the policies that have been set forth by this party. It's on purpose. Let's be honest. We can't look at the policies of the left and say that those policies have, communism it's been proven. It's been proven to be an economic failure. We've seen it fail how many times historically? We've seen it fail in Cuba. We've seen it fail in Russia. We've seen it fail, or in the Soviet Union, I should say. We've seen it fail in China. We've seen it fail the people. The people don't rise to prominence as a result of it, but we have seen free markets create more wealth and create more possibilities for people than in capitalism, create more possibilities for people than any other system on earth. But why is it that we're not talking about those things? Why are we not in the schools teaching those things? Why are we not in front of the cameras during election time talking about those things? Instead, we'd rather say, well, the Democrats are going to take your guns. You better vote for me. The Democrats are going to make you use the same bathroom with men. You better vote for me. The Democrats are just going to allow police to continue to be shot. You better vote for me. Those things are not going to grow conservatism. Those things are not going to teach people why they should believe what they believe. We're just simply creating an identity and forcing people within that confine. And to be brutally honest, like I told you before, I feel like the modern day Republican Party is the conservative wing of the Democrat Party. Because I believe that John F. Kennedy, for example, was a heck of a lot more conservative than Paul Ryan. Heck of a lot. But you were around during that time. Would you agree with that or not disagree with that?
I wasn't around during Kennedy.
I'm just making sure you look like you're falling asleep. So I'm making sure you were still paying attention.
So when I heard what you were saying, understand, at the risk of saying, well, they do it too. But that's modern day politics, because that's what they do too. They get their side to fear. I'll never forget when I was well, this is a bad example because I'm going to have to go into a further story possibly, but let's just say that I was there's a prison in my district that I want the state has a need for more beds in prison space. And I have an empty prison sitting there. So we had a bill that was heard in a hearing to bring this forward. And one of the biggest objectors, this was at the peak of Black Lives Matter movement. And so we had a big presence of them in the committee. There was a woman who was down in the front row, and she brought she had 1 or 2 kids there. I know there was one for sure, because that's part of the story. And things kind of went bonkers in this committee. They had to shut it down. There's a lot of chaos. And I'm standing up front at the testifier table. And as I kind of stepped back away from someone, I bumped this child who was just playing on the ground underneath me. Totally great. We love having kids at the Capitol. Okay. And all I did is I knelt down in a very chaotic moment. And I said, I'm sorry to the little girl. I said, I'm sorry, sweetheart. I didn't literally step on her, but I said, I'm sorry that I stepped on you. Are you okay? And this woman with legitimate fear in her eyes, I believed her when she said this. She says, don't you dare go near my daughter. Stay away from her. And I had compassion for that woman. I had compassion for the child. I felt terrible because this woman legitimately believed everything that she was hearing that I represented, that I wanted to enslave her. Literally. They literally said in there, you are here to enslave Black people. And she believed it. Okay, so it happens on both sides. It's this identity politics that you're talking about. It's this creating fear that you're talking about. Okay, that's why I go back to what is going to change this? Real leadership, real articulate, standing on your principles, leadership that's willing to take the blows. When you talk about Trump, I haven't decided what Trump is going to be yet, and you can't, because we don't see what's going to happen at the end of 4 years or 8 years or even 4 years after he's gone, because a lot of people believe that Trump is a product of Obama. So in a way, this is kind of an indictment for some people on how President Obama did or didn't do things. We are going to have leaders that are willing to do the character things, the morally upright and just things for everyone, standing bold on the things that are right, even if they fly in the face of criticism or fly in the face of expediency. But it's going to take time, because we've been down this road. Some people, listeners here, will say this started with Abraham Lincoln, right? And the
listeners,
centralized government. Some people will say this has been going on
I would
since
agree
the
with
Depression.
that.
Yep. Some people say it's been since the Depression. There's different places, but we've been sliding. This is one of those questions that we have in the Great American Experiment is can we be self-governed? Can we handle being self-governed, or do we want to? One reason why we have a strong government is because we've ceded power to them. The power lies in the voter, but we've given it to government. So we're going to take it back, but it's not going to happen in a couple of years. It's going to happen over a generation.
Well, I think I look back. Obviously, they say hindsight is 20/20, right, Tim? And you and I have had these discussions in private. I do believe that a lot of this started, with Abraham Lincoln. I love looking at the letters written back and forth between Adams and Jefferson and that the Federalist and that federalism movement and the fear that they had of this day coming, where there would be this strong centralized federal Leviathan, right? And that was something that they strictly wanted to avoid because they had seen it in the past. And so as I look at that, I see that, yeah, with Abraham Lincoln violating the Constitution, and I know it's going to get me in trouble, but understand where I'm coming from, violating the Constitution and stepping on the rights of the individual states, that led us down a path. The FDR, with this New Deal, it started us down a path of this social experiment. I believe that where we are today, that 40, 50 years from now will be looked at as another one of those times where we allowed ourselves to be uh, separated by parties, as opposed to, one of the proudest moments of my adult life was right after 9/11 and seeing people put aside differences, put aside everything, and just embracing patriotism again, and just saying, hey, I'm an American, you're an American, we're going to stand up and that was such a beautiful thing to me to see.
Mm-hmm.
And to see
Me
that
too.
contrast against today, where people will willingly burn flags in the streets, all because someone said something that they didn't like, and we see this elevation of feelings above fact, right? And group above individuality. It's an interesting, scary situation to me to see, but I think it's something we have to talk about. It's definitely something that we have to address. And I always enjoy having these conversations with you because I feel that while we might not necessarily agree with the fix, we could at least agree on some of on many of the solutions, but we can agree on the issues.
Yeah, I keep harping on the same subject, but it's because it just keeps coming back up. The Great American Experiment. Can individuals govern themselves? Now, the reason why that question is raised is if you want to be a real nerd and you can find it, go hunt down the movie called Cromwell. It's about Oliver Cromwell. I think it was originally a PBS movie, so a real high budget movie. But Oliver Cromwell is identified as the person that basically brought to us democratic way of running a government, a republic. A friend of mine hates when I say democratic and republic in the same sentence, but just bear with me, okay? We won't get stuck in the semantics on that, okay? And what happened historically is they basically overthrew the king. They brought in the power into the House of Commons, and it was governed by the people. Similar to, the basis of the United States was formed a lot off of what happened there. And I think it was in less than 10 years, they brought a king back in England because they wanted it back. Okay. Now, what I see us happening is we, as a nation, I don't quite want to call it a cycle because there hasn't been enough cycles to call them cycles, but we've had these periods where this question has come up. And it's come up in different ways. At the Civil War, it came up with its biggest question ever. Could we be a nation of individuals? What is the role of the state? What is the role of the federal government? And I know that those questions were maybe answered wrong for you with how we federalize things, but the question was raised then. Okay. I think coming out of the Depression, we said, were we going to be able to succeed as a nation? Coming out of Vietnam and into the 70s, who are we going to be with, especially when it appeared that we were losing the Cold War, or I don't know if we were losing it, but we thought we were. The national pride was almost nothing in the late 70s. We had the hostages in Iran and everything was going bad. And we said, have we lost the United States that we thought we once had? So this question gets raised in different ways time and time again. And I think that's happening right now. And I will tell you, I have faith in our system that we will rise above it and we'll become better people because of it, but it's certainly not a guarantee. I'm not saying we're going to come out of this unscathed. I'm not saying we're going to come out of this a better nation, but I hope that we do. And I think this is why we're having conversations like this. Unfortunately, I think the volatility is increasing. I do think that we're in what some people call a cold civil war right now. I don't know if that translates into an all-out civil war. I got to believe it won't, but it could, right? I don't know what that looks like, but it could. So these are the important questions that we need to be challenging ourselves with is, can an individual be self-governed? And can we hold off the inevitability of an overpowering government trying to strike against that? This has never happened before in the world because rest of the time, the strongest people rule over the rest of them, right? That's what we have to fight against as the United States of America.
Well, we're definitely in it's an amazing time to be alive. It really is. We're definitely in some of the most interesting times in our history. So, and it is exciting to see. It's exciting to see. But I will be very much a voice, or attempt to be a voice, and I appreciate you coming on the show and being a voice, and having substantive discussions about solutions based discussions. We don't have to agree on everything. Next week, I would like to have a friend of mine who is definitely on the far left side of the argument. But I want to talk about something next week, and that's, they always try to pin us and brand us. One of the things I thought Trump did a masterful job of is he branded his opponents. He did a heck of a job branding his opponents. Marco Rubio was Little Marco, and Jeb Bush was low energy Jeb, and lying Ted Cruz. Now, those things are, we forget what you feel about that, but he did a great job of branding them. And what the left has tried to do is brand conservatives, and that's why they hate people like me so much, is because conservatives are racist, they're misogynistic, right? They're homophobic, and so they've tried to brand us with that. But people like myself coming out, we're sellouts. They have to do something. They have to find some way to discredit voices like mine. But we come around to what we have done on the right is we've identified the outliers of our group. That far right racist element, okay, we have completely thrown out. And I think most of us sane-minded individuals have said they might be conservative, but we disavow that, and we completely separate ourselves from that. Because let's be real. Anything done to the extreme is a bad thing, right? I mean, water is great for you. Drink too much of it, it can kill you, right? So anything done in excess can be a bad thing. But what I have not seen is we've identified that extremist element of conservatism, and we have removed them from us, or removed ourselves from them. But what is the dichotomy of that? What is the extremist element of the left? And at what point do they separate themselves from that? And I feel like they are in the place where they're going to have to do that. That Marxist element is going to have to be plucked out and going to have to be disavowed at some point. Otherwise, that party is going to continue to be held hostage by this new crop of leaders. Have you seen that in on a local, on a state level?
Yeah. So, lest you think the Republican Party is having an identity crisis alone, it's nothing compared to what the Democrat Party is having to face now because of what you said. I don't remember if you said this to me before we were on the air, or someone else mentioned this, but both parties have their whole spectrum, including, if you will, their crazies, right? And they're extremists. But what's typically happened in the party is that those extremists, they might have a voice internally. What gets projected out, kind of, they get put in their place. That's not happening right now. The far left of the Democrat Party. There's people in the Minnesota House. I've been in 5 years, and there's people in the Minnesota House that up until this year, I would say they are the farthest left. This year, listening, they are like the moderate Democrats compared to what some of these other people are. And I'm not overstating it. The people that are speaking to the furthest left, the socialists, they openly call themselves themselves socialists. They're proud of it. And they're the ones that are ruling that party right now. They're the ones that are dominating the message and dominating the speech. Now, they're not accomplishing a ton in Minnesota because there's a Republican Senate that's kind of being a stop to a lot of that stuff. But that is something that the Democrat Party is going to have to answer to, unless maybe the United States wants those people to be in power. I certainly hope not. I hope I'm gone by the time someone like AOC truly has power. But that's going to have to be dealt with. Going to have to be addressed, not dealt with. They need to be addressed.
So the ask one lies. I'm sorry.
Okay. Is there something on the questions?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm trying to, but they asked for our thoughts on AOC's criticism of the Electoral College. Did you hear about that the Electoral College is a racist scam? In calling for the reversal of it.
Yeah, you know what the problem is there is racism in the United States. There is systemic racism in certain parts of the U.S. But if you call racism at every single point, every single corner, you call the devil under every rock, as I like to say, then you lose your message. There's nothing racist about the Electoral College. That's like it's just silly. I hope that rational thinking people hear something like that and roll their eyes.
I think most rational people do. The problem that we have is that, and we are such a divided country culturally, and I think that's, I was just talking to my brother who's we've talked is leans very left, and I said, I don't identify with people over race because, to be honest, I identify more with some white people than I do some black people. Just because I might have a similar amount of melanin within my skin does not mean that I have a similar worldview. And I think that our worldviews have much more to do with the way we see the world and the way we see issues than where we're from necessarily, or even what we look like.
So I will tell you that in the state of Minnesota, and I think we're probably reflective of the whole United States in many ways, but here in Minnesota, when we try to explain some issues to our constituencies, I have a very, very rural district. I live in a town of 500 people, and I have towns in my district that are smaller than my town, okay? What we often try to explain to people on a lot of these issues, and I'm talking state level issues, like whether it's transportation or it's human services or whatever, education, that sort of thing, there is a larger difference between urban and rural than there is Republican and Democrat in the state of Minnesota. Now, there are more Democrats in the urban than there are and more Republicans in the rural right now. So you can still make that distinction, but understand that it's the perspective that we have of highly populated metropolitan areas versus the non-metropolitan areas is really where the divides really show up the most.
Absolutely. And it seems to be that seems to be a bigger divide in today's society, realistically speaking, than even race. It seems to be the divide between rural America and urban America. That has nothing to do with color. It has everything to do with what you're used to. And really and truly, I haven't seen anything like it since that mid 1800s. That was the issue with the Civil War, right? You had these northern countries northern states that had this booming industry, right? I mean, the Industrial Revolution was on the come. I mean, there were all types of industries popping up all over the place, and the South, all they had was agriculture. But you had this group in Washington that wanted to set the tone and set the rules for those people who lived in the South, and the South revolted against that. And to be honest, Tim, I'm afraid that we're in a place now where we have elected leaders that are saying things. I mean, essentially, to do away with the electoral college would be doing away with the voice of people who live around me.
Oh yeah, we cannot do. They're AOC saying something like that. I always want to say, are you saying it for a fact, or do you really believe it? Because I find it really hard to believe that she believes it. Because if she believes it, then she's stupid. Okay. Well, so are you stupid or are you lying? Which one is it? So she's saying it for a fact. What's really weird is the base, her base is already with her. One of the challenges is politicians like to talk to their base the most. Why? Because they agree with them. They feel the best there. But she's not expanding the universe of her message at all by saying crazy stuff like that. She expands my universe when she says something stupid like that. So I'm thankful. Hey, real quick side because I know we're getting short on time here. We talk about getting involved and ways to get involved. And if you've been looking at the feed tonight, we have had a lot of involvement, and I'm really excited about that. We've had lots of comments. If you've asked me a question or Q a question, I'm sorry. I have just on my phone here, I'm trying to look at the feed, and I got old man eyes, so I don't see all of it real quick. But this has been great involvement here tonight. And we're obviously talking about something that's important to a lot of people because the comments are getting thrown all over the place. So thank you, everyone who's watching, for being involved and being engaged in this way.
Absolutely. And I have been, it's been exciting. It makes the chat fun. Guys, we don't know which direction to take the show. And some days, if you guys aren't involved, we do want to go. We want to talk about the things that are important to you. And at the end of the day, we're not going to sit in our little echo chamber and have conversations. We could do that all the time, Tim and I, Soder and I. But we want to talk about issues that mean something to you as well. So thank you for being involved. I parrot what Tim said. But guys, we have reached the end of the show. Thank you.
Hey, before we go, Ben, we have another Streamlabs donation. It's a little late. I keep forgetting to bring it up, and you guys have had some really good points that I don't want to interrupt. But we have one from Ted Round for $2. I'm assuming this is in relation to the title of tonight's stream. And he says, or they, I don't know what they are. What is dead may never die.
We need to continue that next week because I have a lot of comments I'd like to make in regards to that. It's been a slow death. I think we could announce, maybe we should say that the Republican Party is on life support. Would that be fair to say?
No,
my involvement
I think it's doing fine.
What did you say, Soder?
I was at the local level. It seems like life support.
And I guess when we come up with these titles, trying to infer meaning through a title is tough. But the issue I have is I've tried to relay it is, man, where do we go as conservatives? Where's our home? Because I don't feel that I feel that the Republican Party probably does gives us the best shot, but for true conservatism, for true conservatives, for free market conservatives, for liberty-minded individuals, where do we go? Where we don't feel like we're voting for the left wing or the right wing of the Democrat Party. It's gone through a lot of changes. And you're right, Tim. You've challenged us all. We have to look in ourselves and find, what can we do? What do we need to do? Instead of just sitting in our own little bubble and complaining about it, we got to get busy and we got to roll up our sleeves and do something. So thanks for the challenge. And we will continue to look for ways to do that. But guys, remember to stay in the fight. We will hopefully be doing another show. If you don't follow me, be sure to follow me on Twitter to stay up on when we have new shows coming. So that's at you can Out of the Darkness. You can look through there, or at Q Derugi. That's at Q letter DURUJI. So at Q Derugi. We're going to put it in the title below, or in the description below. So be sure to follow us and follow Soder as well, so that we can be sure that you are up to date when we are streaming. But we will be trying to do another stream with Nick later on this week. So it was great to have Nick on.
We are? Is Wednesday like last week? Or
I'm not sure if it's going to be Wednesday. We'll have to confirm that. Nick is at what is it, Bubba Fest, I think it is.
Oh yeah.
So we'll have to talk to him when he gets back. But once again, Tim, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. Appreciate it. It's been great, guys. Remember, like I said, stay in the fight. Let's try to answer the call to be active and to find ways to get involved on a local level and on a national level, and just get the truth out. Part of the ways you can do that is like this video, get it out to share it with people, and share the channel. Let's try to bump this up. I think we had topped out at about 32 people in the chat at one time. Let's double that next week. Let's get some people in here. Let's hear from people, not only just like us. Let's hear from the other side too. They have a voice as well, and everyone's welcome here. So have a great night. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and we will see you again later on this week.